And action, and welcome everybody. This is PnP Weekly episode 170. It is 13th of June 2022. Got the year right.
Yeah, finally.
It's only June, so it's good to learn these things.
Yeah.
So into PnP, my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm product manager in the Microsoft 365 platform, and in the PnP Weekly we talk about the latest on the Microsoft 365. And typically we do have a visitor. This time we have Marcin Wojciechowski. Was it good?
Wojciechowski.
Wojciechowski. Marcin Wojciechowski as a visitor from Valo Solutions.
When we practiced, it went way better.
That's true. This pressure, this is killing me. I just
this is live.
crumble because it's live and now it's getting recorded. No, it's fine. Thank you, Marcin, for joining us. But before we go there, quick intros from Waldek as well. Who are you?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Waldek Mastykarz, and I'm Cloud Developer Advocate at Microsoft for Microsoft 365.
Excellent. So we'll start with an interview with Marcin, good discussion related on where he came from, and also we already recorded that, so I kind of know that it was a good discussion. So and what he's doing and his tips related on quality assurance, especially on Microsoft 365. So that's his really focus area. But let's jump on the interview with Marcin and come back on the articles right after that. Welcome, Marcin. Thank you for joining us on the PnP Weekly episode 170. Good to have you on the show. Let's start with you, and let's start with a quick intro. So can you do a quick intro, who you are, where you're based, what do you do for a living?
Hello, with pleasure. My name is Marcin Wojciechowski. I live in Kraków, Poland. For living, I do SharePoint development mostly in Valo Solutions, or recently bought by Staffbase, so I believe that it's Staffbase. But for the, let's say, side projects, I do cooperate with two consulting companies, but I'm not sure I can share the names because I believe there is some PnP issues with that. But yes, mostly to stay in touch with what's the newest in consulting world. I do like to, from time to time, check out what's new, because effectively working on product can be very tunneling in your thinking.
And you said that you're based in Krakow as well. Can you talk about a bit on Marcin? How did you end up being you said SharePoint developer? I guess it's a bit more broad than SharePoint nowadays, isn't it? So
you work with Graph, yes. Identity, Azure, serverless, containers, perhaps?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Thankfully,
there you go.
Containers, not yet. So I started, I think, 8 or 9 years ago, of course, with on-prem. What else? I remember it very vividly because after my first interview, it was even some kind of scholarship. I made a note, check out what is this SharePoint that I'm supposed to work on.
I fully recognize it. I was exactly the same thing. I did internship way back when. And it was so I had my interview just because the vacation time, right? And they left me and they gave me an external disk with VHD with on it MOS 2007, which was then in preview. Like back then, my experience was Apache, PHP, and SQL, right? And it's like, what do I do with this? Like, how do I start this? Like,
yeah, like I was
totally recognize that
student in applied math, which means like the proper programming language was something completely different. We played around with some weird algorithms in C or C++, and we were.
Here you are building web parts.
Exactly. and turns out my amazing capability of detecting algorithm computability is not as useful anymore. Ability to solve integrals in memory also fading to black and not so useful anymore. Even graph theory is less useful, although it's a beautiful part of math. So I hope I will get back with it somehow, some way. And by the way, graph theory,
the Web 4, I think it will be back.
The before,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so this is how I started. Actually, I started as QA because that was the only opening back then in the company I applied for. And after like a quarter, I talked my manager into giving me a shot as a developer. And that was fun. And starting with that, I tried to learn more about SharePoint because turns out I started with 2010 and it was already quite a powerful engine for multiple of things. A little bit scary because back in 2010, a lot of consultants decided that if you have a problem, SharePoint will solve it. Whatever the problem is.
What do you mean? What's wrong with that?
So at some point, we were developing an ERP system backed by SharePoint lists. No one realized that SharePoint lists are not exactly a relational database.
It's not a relational database. Exactly. Don't do that, by the way. Anybody who's watching or listening. So
please don't. So
you can store a lot of data in them, but not terabytes and not millions of rows.
What do you mean not terabytes? Of course you can store terabytes.
Not in lists. Libraries, yes. Yeah. But again, so storage, files, different way of thinking. Okay, you know. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Good point.
In general, that wasn't the best idea. And we actually switched the approach to normal database. After that, of course, we graduated to 2015. 2015 was like a whole new world. I believe in 2015, REST was introduced. And then actually, for me, the hell broke loose because I realized now that you don't have to use CSOM so heavily, you can think about the stability of your solutions because that's only REST API. And you can test around the REST API. And yeah, to be honest, I focused very, very much on unit testing of SharePoint in general, and this is like where I put most of my attention because I believe no one did it back then. Yes, when SPFX was introduced, I believe Iliad did a few great blogs about unit testing. Andrew did some. But again, I thought it's very little. Like it's only an entry point. There is so much there. It's such a big, complex story. It's for investing in. So yes, this is what I did, and eventually, maybe not related to testing itself, but I ended up doing products for back then Valo. Which is extremely fun ever since. Like the whole switch from consultancy to product, it's extremely refreshing, especially when you can actually apply your own pace without any
delivery. Well, that's a deadline, of course, but it's not like this Friday you need to have all of this done, and so.
Exactly. So it's very nice.
What was the biggest difference or change you've seen when moving over from projects to products?
To be honest, at least to me, it wasn't so clear because the projects I used to work on were usually quite big ones. By big, I mean long and complex. So almost everything I did previously had some part of product development within that because, the first provisioning engine before PnP, it was something that we had to support for about 5-6 years. So it's quite a lifetime. Another big thing was actually a migration tool, which we also had to support for quite a long time. But to be honest, the biggest change was, or the mindset change was that now actually you have to think about those small things like select clauses in REST calls. Yeah? When you did consultancy, the performance is not exactly the biggest issue, because you are limited to, let's say, one customer. You can quickly apply some small fixes. So things like select clauses, additional filter clauses, batching graph requests and SharePoint requests, that wasn't a priority because, effectively, it's not a big deal. Of course, unless it becomes a big deal. But
it isn't a big deal until it becomes one.
Yeah. Exactly.
Often the case.
But in product, you actually have to consider that from day one. And it's a little bit more challenging. Okay? You have to bear the scale in mind even from the very, very start. Like even stupid examples like pagination. Yeah, like when you are doing a new application for some customer as a consultant, you don't exactly think about pagination in the first place because you think, oh, okay, how many?
You only have 10 items in a list. There is no other page.
Exactly. Exactly. And if there will be more, give me 2 days, there will be pagination.
So that is an interesting thing, right? How you deal with that? How do you what is your philosophy about developing for scale? Right? Because as you say, you build something, developers you have access to a test tenant with 10, 20 accounts, some files, 50 sites, 20 groups. That's not the scale. And then so you build something, you press F5 and it works. You might have some tests in your pipe that works too because it's still the same scale. And then you deploy it to production and then it doesn't because the customer has millions of sites and hundreds of users and accounts and items and everything else. So how do you incorporate that thinking into developer work?
So I believe there are 2 ways around that. First one is called integration, which effectively means you get your developer tenant and you populate it with tremendous amount of data with PowerShell, JavaScript scripts, anything. Or you are doing isolation testing and you isolate specific component. This is something I like to do, especially, for example, with Graph. You mock tremendous amount of data and you check
one
if
item,
the pagination
10 items, minus one item, 8 items. Wait.
Yeah, but especially with let's say tooling like Jest, yes, you can easily mock very, very large data sets. You can decide yourself, do you want to get throttled here? Do you want to test retry strategies? All of this, if you isolate your code, becomes very easy. Because again, how would you test in your integration environment for retry strategies when you are throttled from a graph, let's say?
I have an idea.
No. But can you, Marcin, actually elaborate that a bit? So what was the tool and how it can be used? So because again, I don't think most of the people who are listening or watching are aware of this. You said it. You can do this tool. Of course, everybody knows that. That's not always the case. So what was the tool what you're using?
Let's ask as the audience. Raise your hand if you know about it.
Anybody? Nope. Marcin, no hands.
Okay, so as I assume you were talking about frontend, about SharePoint framework, I believe the best way to test frontend is Jest. Amazing unit testing library, highly recommended. Easy to set, relatively easy to set up, and can do a lot of things. And one of those things is something called the mocking. So mocking means you run your code, but you provide some fake implementation of specific component. In that case, let's say it will be Graph Client. And I can talk very, very long about why not to use MS Graph Client, but call AAD HTTP client provider with Graph. But again, that's more, I think, nuanced thing. But you can create such mock, and in such mock, you can say that instead of calling actual graph and worry about authentication, read this file and let's consider this file page 1. There's even a beautiful method in Jest called mock return value once, or mock resolve once, which will return specific data only once, then you register it again with different response. It returns again with different response. Great way to, let's say, if you want to test your throttling little scenario, you mock the first response with 429, I believe, throttling.
429, yeah.
Yes, then you register the next response to be your proper response, and you validate that, oh, okay, actually from my method where I provided my mocked HTTP client, I called it once, I got valid.
But that means that as developer, first of all, you're aware of all the different edge cases that you might get. 429 throttling, 500 internal null server error that might also be throttling, whatever else error that might come along the way, token expired, whatever else. So one, as a dev, you need to be aware of all of that. Two, you need to incorporate that in all your tests. And if there's another change, another edge case, you need to be again aware of it and incorporate it in your test. So it's quite, it's not trivial to do. Are there tools that you're aware of, or are there things that you can do for folks who aren't as well versed in like being experienced with working with web APIs that, well, they can be out, they can be throttled, they can be under whatever. How can is there something for, let's say, common folks who aren't experts in that topic that they can use and say, like, I use this, I'm good?
Good question. I don't know. I believe the best resource would be actually the list of responses you can get from Graph API. I believe it's documented on MS Docs site for Graph, and that's it. And unfortunately, everything else you have to suffer yourself. Like there is this huge thing that you should always write your tests first, and you should think about those edge cases. I don't exactly believe in that. Yeah, it's okay to introduce some bugs as long as if I know.
It's okay to introduce bugs
as you can fix them fast. Like no hard done.
I guess that's one of the key learnings as you're moving from consulting to the product, and I'm an ex-consultant as well in Microsoft and before Microsoft as well. But it's one of those things that, well, clearly there's a bug here. Why did they ship the product even though there's a bug clearly here? What are they doing? And then as you move in the product development, you realize that, well, every now and then you actually knowingly push the product out regardless of the fact that you know that there are bugs. And that might be like even as shocking, well, not probably shocking when it comes from a Microsoft employee, but it might be shocking as a general rule that actually happens, because just realities of resourcing is that you will never be able to fix all of the known bugs within your product. It's impossible.
I don't agree with it. I think it depends at the end of the day. Like, imagine that you're building system that, I don't know, is meant to help surgeon do surgery on a heart.
Fair point.
I don't want bugs in that.
No. It's priorities. It's priorities, resourcing and balancing, actually risk management.
It's accepting risk. Exactly that, yes. Right? So how much risk are you willing to accept? Like your web part showing stocks or showing the weather is out for a day because something like shrug.
But again,
the plane does not fly, not shrug.
Yes, exactly.
The question, should we test for every possible request, that every weird request will return 400 and we will actually properly handle it? Like, it's effectively impossible.
Yes.
Because let's even consider call to Graph to search Graph API and to validate all possible options with all possible content classes.
Combinations, it's
absolutely impossible. Maybe not impossible. You can hire a few thousand people and make them.
Impractical.
Well, I think impractical, especially in the world where we are, is probably the right way of doing it. But of course, there's always the risk that then it impacts somebody's business. But again, it's risk management, and because there is no, what's the right way of saying this? There's no, the world is not binary. It's not yes or no. It's not, you cannot do everything in a 100% level, because in many cases you're not aware of some of the things. There's always unknowns. There's always unexpected returns. If you're a partner building on top of somebody else's platform, you don't know what's behind of the platform actually. It's just the documentation. It's a black box otherwise. So it's an interesting balance of resources.
And I mean,
for sure.
even then, I mean, like if you would draw an analogy with building a house or doing something on a house, right? Like the materials you choose are meant to give you, let's say, security against something, right? So like it's perfectly fine. Like if there's wind, your house will stand. But if there's a meteor falling on your house, it will break. Duh. Yeah. Because it's not a bunker. Yes. If you want that, well then
it depends.
You build a bunker.
Then you build it in a different way. Yes,
exactly. Right. So it's just like the threshold that you're willing to accept. And it's the same thing. Like if you build on somebody else's work, well, I mean, sure, we can spend upfront a month that you, the customer, are going to fund. And if you're not okay with that, well, then we are going to make assumptions based on the best guess and hunch, but with a degree of risk in there, right? It's just like everything else. And I think it's also an interesting topic that we I think, talk enough about is that oftentimes when folks talk about risk, like, no, like zero risk. No, like risk, like we accept risk left and right. Like you wake up, you accept risk, right? So it's not about avoiding risk at all costs. It's accepting risk to some point.
I started thinking the waking up and risk, but again, it's
But that actually brings a whole topic of, let's say, continuous integration, continuous delivery. Because I think especially with cloud products, this is essential, critical, and I think that was one of the most eye-opening things when I've learned that when some time ago we tried to introduce back in consulting business idea of consulting of continuous delivery. People were scared, but they were not scared because there will be some bugs that we won't fix, but they were scared because they were used to this, 2 releases per year, and they know that if they request a change and bug fix, it takes half a year. Worst case scenario. So then when they realize that, okay, there is a bug and I reported this bug, it's fixed 2 days later, everyone benefits continuous delivery. So again, accepting risk, but if you have a tool like continuous delivery, if you have reliable automated regression in place, it's getting really easier.
Now, can you talk a bit about what does, not going any let's say secrets and NDA stuff related on Valo Solutions or staff-based case, but what are the tools and the ways Valo is doing this? So there's obviously continuous delivery, continuous integration, testing, all of that stuff.
Yes,
but any kind of if you would consider, let's say when you graduated, you have masters from the Kraków University. I was just checking you out from LinkedIn. Is it Kraków? No, It's actually somewhere else. Anyway, so
it is Kraków, yeah.
Okay, so the name is really problematic. Anyway, so Polish names are not easy for.
What's wrong with that?
Exactly. But if you were talking to a person who graduates from the university, what would you explain how the development? What are the tooling? What are things how to be successful within the product development from your perspective, because you're working focused on the quality assurance and the continuous integration model?
Again, difficult question because everyone
of course everything
depends.
It depends. Everyone finds fun in weird and different places. I would just say have fun. If you can have fun with your work and if you enjoy it, eventually you will get good at it enough to not to be scared. Let's put it that way. So just try to enjoy what you are doing, and optimally. And that was, I think, the best piece of advice I ever got. Never write a code you don't understand.
But if I copy paste that, if I don't write it, is that the same thing? So
that's the same.
You don't get it, but you didn't write it, so kinda it gives you a way out. Yeah, that's sneaky.
But the guidance was never write code which you don't understand. But I copied that from internet. I didn't write it.
Great success. Yes.
Exactly.
I copied that. No, I think
That's actually, by the way, that's a great tip. That's a good
horrible
tip.
advice.
Yeah, just
luckily nowadays we have tools that can help you understand the code. Like you select the code, explain this, and you're like, huh.
Oh yeah.
Copilot.
Exactly. Copilot, amazing tool. But back when I started, and I believe this is a great story for this audience, I tried to figure out the pagination in SharePoint list items. That was SharePoint 2010. And then was
84 years.
SP iterator.
It was SP list item collection paginator.
Pretty close, yes.
Something
close.
like that.
Same. Tomato.
This was just SharePoint list item collection iterator or something like that, and that was it. And like it took quite a lot of reverse engineering to figure out how the string should be composed to get to the next page. So yeah, never write the code you don't understand if you need to reverse engineer it, and this is actually something I do enjoy as well.
That is an interesting point.
Trying to find the class name. Now I got me confused.
That is yeah. So you go find that. I'm going to ask another thing, right? Because like you mentioned, your background is in SharePoint on-prem. I've been there too, and I think we share kind of the same thinking in the sense that you say that you like to learn how something works. Well, like the truth is in code. You can have dogs, but at the end of the day, the code is like holds the truth about the way it works. And the back then on premises, right? It was really cool because you had the assemblies. You could open them up and see like, hey, like how this thing really works. Like what parameters can I pass? Because maybe not everything is in a docs. Maybe docs are out of date. Things, right? So in the past, we had this ability to look at the code that we work with. Nowadays, that's no longer the case, at least for a big part, because we're in a cloud. We don't have assemblies of anything. We have the scripts that are on the client, and we could go ways with them. But there's no, it's not as convenient as it was. So how do you apply that philosophy of, following the truth that is the code in the current world where, well, bad luck, you don't have the access to the code?
Yeah, so the backend of SharePoint, of course, is unfortunately off limits. Yeah, like based on how it works, based on what I remember from the on-prem days, I can roughly guess what are the limitations, what it is for. But actually, online introduced another beautiful thing that you can reverse engineer, and this is SP page assembly and Teams page assembly, which are beautiful files. If you have extra few hours, I also highly recommend go ahead, play around with this. Extremely powerful tool. Like thanks to this, I discovered amazing global variable called SP component loader, which I believe doesn't get enough love in
unsupported. Unsupported.
Roughly documented.
It's right there on the page. And if you think code is documentation, then indirectly it's documented.
I love the way you feel. Yes. But I consider this a great tool to play around with. It's like especially for consulting, because in product it's a little bit scary to rely on things that are not exactly supported. It takes quite a lot of courage, let's say. But in consulting world, like let's say you have to prepare few web parts related to news or to events, like something you can easily configure with highlighted content. You can either spend few months developing something very similar to highlighted content web part, or you can spend few days, figure out how the configuration for it looks like, and prepare pre-configurations for out-of-the-box web part with small asterisks. It may break, but the delivery will be cut twice in time. So
Again, we're back
That's actually
to managing risks.
Risk management, exactly.
Exactly.
That really comes back on again on risk management and resource management and understanding the impact of individual decisions. And of course, from Microsoft side, we certainly want people to use supported things. But again, there are ways of accessing things in the DOM, which is not smart thing to do necessarily. But again, it's not binary. It's not yes or no. It's like in a gray area, so to say.
If you're willing to accept the risk of that,
yeah, yes, exactly.
Right, and also you don't hold us accountable when things change because we said this isn't an API.
Yeah, that's
right. So if you're okay with these two things, who are we to say don't do it?
Yep, that's true. We cannot control an individual companies across the world and how they do business. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Now, from a timing perspective, I wanted to do a few things. So can you, let's say, to two top 10, top 3 lists. I'm putting you on a spot. We didn't actually.
Two top 10 lists. That's 20 items.
Whatever. So, and what would be the 3 things for you coming back on when you graduated from? You're from math and science and technology from the university. What would be the 3 things for tell to you when you were just graduating from university to concentrate? As you think of the career,
learn SharePoint.
You kind of attached 2 of them already, maybe. But again, if we put you on a spot,
as I said, I believe there is only one thing. Yeah, find something that you enjoy. If you enjoy it, like you will get good at it. There is no other way around. And especially in IT, we are in that very, very comfortable position when we can do things we like and not worry about other things.
And work is at least 8 hours in the weekdays of your life. So it's worthwhile to do something which you enjoy rather than hate, because that would have a negative impact on the rest of the time in the day for sure. So
yeah, I think the caveat there is it's an illusion to say that you will have that you will only be doing the things you love.
That's true as well, of course.
Yeah, but
right. So at the end of the day, it is important to have that ultimate goal, the horizon, like where you want to go, and have in balance that thing, right? Like you cannot. It cannot be. It's impossible for it to be just the rainbows and unicorns, and it cannot be also the things you hate.
Right, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not unicorns.
What
do you mean?
Have a plan.
No.
Now the other thing
how many emails do you have in?
No. I was just proud on Waldek knows that, but we had a sidetrack. So last week when I was traveling in Redmond, I had 9 hours on the plane when I was flying over, plus the extra time during the week because you don't work from home with family and everything else, and of course they have all of my colleagues have their own life and everything else, so you have a lot of extra time. So I clean up my inbox, and that's like 5,000 emails, and that's a lot. It's all cleaned now. It's like
it took you 18 hours to press Control-A delete.
No, but that is an option, but that's not how I play. So it's
okay. Control-A.
It's hard.
Congratulations! It must be an amazing feeling to have.
Yeah, exactly. Finally catching up after all of the months you're seeing just the piling in of the stuff. Anyway, now coming back on the other things. So Marcin, 3 things or 1 thing which comes to mind. If anybody is actually doing development within Microsoft 365, what would be your kind of top tools which people should learn to take advantage?
For me, of course, it's just Graph Explorer and Edge console or Chrome console. It's very powerful tool. To be honest, my Achilles heel is PowerShell. I cannot do PowerShell in an advanced level, which means that my ad hoc language of choice is JavaScript, and you can do almost anything in the
context of, so you basically go in the context of the page, and then in the Chrome console you are in the context, so you're able to execute JavaScript.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's actually a smart way of approaching things for sure. That's actually really good. really good tree list. And of course, Graph Explorer is critical for any of us building anything in Microsoft 365, for sure. And by the way, I have to call out, congratulations, Gina, on the awesome team. We just saw last week again more people joining on Gina's team, and they were in Redmond at the same time as I was, which is kind of a coincidence, but still. So it's great to see how that team is getting more and more growth and also usage and smart people joining on there. So really cool. So Graph is just absolutely wonderful.
I wanted to ask one more of the, one tip or 3 tips thing. And that will be the last thing before we close, because we're over time. We all know that every week we release something at Microsoft, and there are new announcements, resources and features and tools and SDKs and whatever.
Good one. Yep.
How do you stay on top of all that? Like one resource, one go-to place you use to stay on top.
1, 2, 3.
Twitter or die. Like it's mostly Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any accounts you follow, or do you have a list, or do you have selection?
I follow as many as I can. What can I say?
Okay, all of them.
All of them. All of the Twitter.
I follow everybody.
Yes. But that's actually Twitter is for sure. It's a good way of and hashtags, following up on hashtags in Twitter. If people are not familiar, use TweetDeck. And by the way, Louisa Fries has an absolutely brilliant 2 blog post series related on how you should be communicating in Twitter and also how do you follow things. And those are actually really powerful, because again, quite often you see people not to be that aware of hashtags and TweetDeck and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of thinking behind of that. So, but let's put that one in the blog post notes as well. But I guess that's it, Marcin. So thank you for joining us. Really great discussion. You are the first person. Did we mention this out loud? You're the first person who joined on the PnP Weekly who is not a Microsoft employee or a as an MVP.
I think he's also the first. You're also the first person who joins who lives in Krakow.
Yep.
Another success.
There you go.
What can I say? Thanks for having me. That was a pleasure.
Thank you, Marcin. Thank you for all of your contributions in the open source and community channels as well. Those are really cool. So thank you for continuing being active on the community channels. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Excellent. And with those words, we will jump on the weekly articles with Waldek.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcin, one more time, and a really cool discussion. It's good to have a bit of a different perspective, not significantly different, but it's the quality assurance is a really important topic for sure whenever we're implementing things. And I actually love the discussion related on risk management and the validation of that perspective, because again, this is one of those classic discussions. Again, I still remember when I started as a consultant, even in Microsoft, I was like, what do you mean you know that you had some bugs and you need to ship? Well, it's risk management. It's just part of the dealing with the products and everything else. So, and sure, less bugs is always better. It's just realities of life. But quite often there are unknown bugs.
It is.
And we just need to ship it because there are areas which were not, and scenarios which were not tested. So if you think about unit testing, the coverage percentage unit on the unit tests, it used to be like you have to hit 80% to be super cool, but it's still 80%. It's not 100%. 80 would be already like.
Yeah, and I mean, just because, and that's also an interesting case, right? Because like if, for example, in CLI for M365, we have 100%
Sorry, my lips are clicking.
Of the coverage for tests, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
But even though, like, what does it mean? It means that every single of our line of code has been hit with a test. But that doesn't mean that we test every possible case, right? Because just because we paste through a particular branch of code, it doesn't mean that we tested because string, right? Imagine that you have a different branch of code for a string that is 6 characters or less.
Yep.
But maybe there is an exception when the string character is single character or Unicode. So
exactly.
It is less than 6, but there's an edge case in the case of too.
in a case of string, it would be basically like a 6 character. There would be at least 6 different tests related on length of the string, then the null value, then the not a string empty value testing, and then the encoding value differences.
Unicode, the byte order mark, like non-printable characters, all of that. Like
all of that stuff, special characters.
The more
and
you know about it, the more cases you can come up with, right? And it's and again, just the fact that particular branch of code was hit with a test, like that doesn't really mean that that thing can never fail.
Yep, exactly. That's a good point, and then you don't necessarily always think about those. That what does the coverage
more than often means. You actually don't, right? Because you have a task.
I think about it every single day. So when I'm waking up, I'm just kidding.
That's the way you. That's why you look the way you look.
Thank you. That's
you're welcome.
That's a super
Nothing like compliment.
Wow. Oh, you mean the dark eyes and everything else? Like, just the face.
Not a single gray hair. That was a compliment, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, unexpected. Huh?
Yeah, but I would love to be a silver fox, like you. So now I'm jealous.
Dye your hair.
That would be actually really good. What are you doing again? No, anyway.
Experience.
I have
to experience on my hair.
That is true. I have to increase my credibility of dyeing my hair gray. So people will believe me. I look too young.
Consultant.
Exactly. Wow. Anyway, let's actually jump on the articles of the day. We do have quite a lot of articles because we recorded the previous setup in Friday before the Monday. Not that it's that big of a deal because on weekends we don't actually that many articles. But anyway, let's go to the articles and come back on the discussion on in general what's happening. It is the screen. Let's start from here. This is a bit older actually, but we missed it last time. It is from May 31st, 2022, on how Microsoft is equipping manufacturing workers with the tools of the future. And this is actually quite important blog post and sharing the vision around a lot of the work what we do in multiple organizations, because it's really about empowering the frontline workers as well. So in the past, we always talked about the information workers and white collar workers and people who are sitting on front of their desktops. And yeah, there's a lot of those people as well, and there's still core audience of Microsoft software. But more and more people are carrying devices with them, and the so-called blue collar workers and people who are not sitting on the front of the desktop 24/7 or 8 hours in a day, not necessarily 24/7, but we want those people to be connected on the company systems as well, and the communications. They want to feel that they're part of the company as well, and that is a big focus area with Viva and other areas as well. And this is a really great blog post walking through the different already done investments or upcoming investments in different areas. And there was one thing what we actually called out from here, which really spots that this is probably the first time what we're saying this openly, that this is coming, which is good. But there's a lot of different capabilities in Teams, approvals, collaboration directly in your any device what you're using, super important things. Having the Viva Connection communications, easily access to system, to corporate systems and information. Walkie-talkie is actually really cool as well for those who need this kind of an immediate communication channel in the Microsoft Teams. Makes perfect sense. But this one is the one which we actually haven't been super vocal, and I haven't actually seen this mentioned anywhere else, which is actually a bit of a surprise. Of course, knew that it's coming, because I'm in this organization, but it's good that it's actually public as well. So looking into having a multiple home sites and then multilingual dashboards in the Viva Connection, which is a understandable next step within the Viva Connection offerings, because individual divisions organization want to have their own specific set of cards and experiences within the Viva Connection, which makes perfect sense. But a lot of cool stuff in here. Now, the next one we had related on craft from the Microsoft Teams side. Do you want to talk about this one, Waldek?
Absolutely. Right. So as we know, we work more and more remotely and the hybrid way, meaning some folks are in the office, but some are not, right? And that experience where everybody used to be in the office like that might no longer be the case at all, right? So we're thinking at Microsoft, and like, what are different ways in which we can support people to collaborate with each other, to meet with each other in a hybrid setting where not everybody is in the same space, physical space, but that, yes, you want to have that rich fidelity with regards to the experience, right? So in this article, I guess we're talking about the new tools, devices that we introduced, technology that we introduced to improve that experience of meeting across different locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not go too detailed in here, and we'll talk about what happened last week and all of that after the recordings. But I still have to call out that when I started working remotely to Redmond back in 6 years ago, whenever it was a while ago, we didn't even have Teams at the time. It was Skype for Business.
You sent owls?
Yes, we sent owls. Since I'm from Finland, Lapland, I have a white owl, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, so yes. But it was this weird situation where I'm sitting from home, joining on the Skype, and everybody else is sitting in the room, and then you're the one who's on the screen, and everybody else is sitting in the screen, and that's the screen in the room, and that's a bit of a different experience, and that's what we're trying to do with all of this new software. So kind of a splitting, for example, these individual persons in the room to individual videos, so that it doesn't matter, are you sitting in the room or are you actually joining remotely? You are basically in the same.
You appear the
same in the.
And also the cool thing is that people in the same room, they don't face each other, they face the screens, right?
Yes.
So it levels the field across everybody in the call. No matter whether there are multiple folks in a group somewhere, no, like everybody is treated the same way. It levels the field, and in a way, you pioneered all of this 6 years ago already. Like you were the guy, like I need this experience, and now it's here.
Of course, but yeah. So even on last week when I was in Redmond, and we'll come back on details on that one in a second. But there was meetings where some people are joining remotely, and there was people joining from the meeting rooms, and everybody opened up the laptop and joined on the meeting through the laptop with camera on, so that basically in the meeting everybody is in the individual videos, and that was actually really cool. So even though they're sitting in the same room, we're basically in the individual video streams in the thing, which is absolutely brilliant. Like everybody is welcome, everybody is inclusive, like it should be.
Yeah.
So anyway, also on the Teams Vlog side, expanding background noise suppression across platforms and scenarios. So let's not deep dive on this one. The basic idea here is that as we have background noise, like in my case, actually, funny enough, you cannot hear that, but there's a aircon right next to me, which is trying to cool the room right now and having a hard time of doing that because it's pretty hot outside. But you can't hear it, and it's not because of Teams in my case, exactly. It's actually the noise, background noise removal in this device. But the device is pretty expensive, and we cannot basically buy everybody a pretty expensive devices. So how about having that background noise removal in the Teams, in the audio, which is getting transmitted through Teams? And it's actually pretty mind-blowing, not when you think about it. So almost real time, we do audio optimizations for the other person, which is other side of the world. It's
Brilliant.
Just mind-blowing.
Well, it makes perfect sense, right?
It does, but the fact that we can do it so fast and it's just, this used to be a hard thing to do, but I guess we're just dinosaurs, even though I don't have great hair.
So was building cars and sending people to the moon. And we did it.
And we did it. That is true. Now, this one, actually, I want to talk about this one because I was partly of the team who created this. So last Friday, and the blog post is out, but we're recording this on Monday. The public announcement, social media on this blog post is going to go out later today. But we released on Thursday last week a new cultural site template, which is Pride Month for June 2022. So June 2022 is the Pride Month. And we released this one into Lookbook service. So as a starting point for any companies to create this kind of a culture of inclusiveness and embracing the diversity within their company. And of course, it's just a template to get started, and then you can modify that based on your company policies and requirements and thinking. But we wanted to have something which will then make it easy for anybody to actually provision a nice looking site with the cool content and then start adjusting the content with that. It's based on, the implementation is still based on the PnP provisioning templating because the out-of-the-box provisioning templating unfortunately does not yet support all of these needed requirements, which is, by the way, something what we're working on, but more on that one whenever we get stuff a bit further down in the road into engineering. But really cool way of getting example sites and content available, which can be adjusted. So, and then this one, SharePoint roadmap.
Oh, you want to talk about that too?
I can talk about this. So again, the monthly roadmap on SharePoint. So basically, typically in the first day of the month, or then first days of the next month, we'll talk about what was the summary within the last month. The teams had this one before. SharePoint and OneDrive and Viva basically is covered in here. So talk about all of the new changes and updates which were announced and shipped or partially rolling out as part of the announcement. So something which was called out in Twitter pretty recently as well is, for example, section templates. So you can much more easily create content and much more efficiently do that. Not just page templates, but also section templates, which is really, really cool as well. So you can define them. Loop components are in Outlook Mail, so calling out other things as well. The loop components are coming to SharePoint sooner or later as well, and in multiple areas. So all of this is kind of evolving together with our partner organizations. A lot of new stuff in Viva and calling out those integration options as well. And Microsoft List is now in a feedback portal, which is good news as well. So we have an official way of then collecting the input around what's needed. So really, really cool. But a lot of cool stuff. And well, that was actually a very, really cool thing. The live share, we talked about that one in the previous recording as well. That is really, really, really cool. So for sure. You want to talk about this one, Waldek?
Definitely. So we talked about this in the past already, the bookings API, right? So in Microsoft 365, there is the bookings feature, which you can use to book resources, people, and so forth and so on. And now in Microsoft Graph, there are app-only APIs available for that. So if you have any kind of application that automates booking, automates creating, managing them, and so forth and so on, you now have app-only access from your app to these APIs. So no longer you need to worry about ensuring that refresh token will not expire, and when it does, you need to re-authenticate the user somehow. No. You can have proper app-only access to these APIs in your app. So definitely, if you build anything in this space, check it out.
And then we had a new blog post from Rabia Williams related on Microsoft Teams JavaScript SDK v2, which is now generally available. You want to talk about this one, or should I?
Yeah, definitely. So at build, the latest build, which was, as we're recording that 3 weeks ago already, roughly,
Yep.
We talked about the ability for you to bring your Teams apps to Office.com and Outlook, right? And with that, so for that, we introduced a new version of the Teams.js SDK that allows you to detect in your app in which host you run, but also what the host where your app is exposed, host meaning Outlook, Office.com, or Teams, is capable of. And that is a very important part because you can make your app context aware. Think about it in a way, like imagine that you have something like orders, right? And in the order, you have the account manager, right? And you might want to contact the account manager, where if you are in Outlook, the logical way for you is to contact them via email. Whereas if you're in Teams, well, you would send them a message on Teams. And your app can be aware of that because it can detect, using the new SDK, these abilities that are exposed to you in the context. So you don't need to hard code it, or you don't need to do something like if in Outlook do this and otherwise. No. You can just say, can I send here email? And if it's a yes, then you run your code to send email. Otherwise, you can say, hey, can I send here a message on Teams? Yes, you can. You do that, right? So all of these abilities are exposed to you through the new SDK. If you build apps for Teams, check it out because it's a really cool way for you to expose your app to a broader audience of users and customers.
Absolutely. And this is a good first step heading to a direction where we have a unified way of doing packaging and deployment and management of apps within Microsoft 365. So it's something which will evidently happen sooner or later, and we're heading to that direction together with cross organizations, which is really, really cool. Now, we also had a announcement or a new article related on enabling single sign-on in a tap app. You've been involved in creating this, Waldek, right?
A little bit, right?
Okay.
So there's a big group of folks on Microsoft who worked on this, and the idea is that we refresh the guidance about how you offer the single sign-on experience in Teams tabs, right? So if you build Teams tab and you want to offer users this seamless experience to authenticate into the app, we have for you new guidance that talks about the different points, what are the different things you have to take into account, and basically walking you step by step through the different options and things you should take into account.
Yep, really, really cool. Let's check that one out for sure as well. Now, we also had a new article in our Microsoft 365 Platform community blog from Valo Adekunle around the quick overview of Microsoft Power Pages, which was the new evolution of Power Portal, so to say, announced in the build 2022. So a quick summary on what those are and what are the capabilities and how does it look like as you're getting started on creating them within the web portal, which is really, really cool. Then we had the Power had another article. I'll check this one as well. So understanding data connectors with Microsoft Power Apps and really explaining what are the data connectors and kind of a baseline getting started blog posts, which are super, super valuable because quite often we talked about this one so many times in this show that we've missed the getting started. How would I actually do the baseline the most simplistic way and then start evolving from there? And quite often what happens is that, well, everybody knows this and then we're jumping on and then no, don't do that.
Yeah,
basics.
Every day there is new folks who start, and we need to cover the basics in an accessible way.
Absolutely. Now, Marcin talks about the unit testing as well.
Exactly. So this is an article from our guest, right? Again, how would you start unit testing SPFX apps, right? So he talked about the importance of that. Why do you need to think about it and so forth and so on? And then it's like the obvious next thing you would ask is, okay, cool, I buy into it. I want to do it. Where do I start? Well, here it is. Here's the answer to that. Here's a short article that walks you through the basics, basically to the point where after this, you'll be able to run a test that apparently fails. And then hopefully you will be able to fix that and to have a way to test your app end to end so that you can deploy with confidence.
Yep, absolutely. Really cool stuff. Thank you for Marcin on that one. Power Apps community blog had a new blog post around how to publish major version in SharePoint using the Microsoft Power Automate. So you could reference blog posts related on how to do that. So basically creating new content and publishing a major version, which means that it's available for other people as well, not only for you as the creator of the item or an article or a document. So talks about that version and handling in Power Automate. Really, really cool stuff as well. Now, Recording 365 had a new article, new video. Is the right way of saying that, right?
Yes, exactly. And they talked about the recently announced ability that's coming soon, I guess. Yep. That you will be able to have multiple home sites in Viva connections. And this feature has been asked by people a lot, right? So now, Daryl, yes, they shared their opinion on the topic, what's coming, how they see it, and so forth and so on. So if you want to hear like the opinion from the field on our announcement, check it out.
Absolutely. Now, Chris O'Brien had a good post around the SharePoint syntax. He's been blogging about SharePoint syntax, so he's clearly working within this area. SharePoint syntax is all about advanced document management and automation, detection of patterns within the documents, and then streamlining the experiences. And he talks about the SharePoint content assembly, which is part of the SharePoint syntax, and hints and tips on that topic. So it talks about things to consider and how to get started and all of that. So really, really great blog post for him as well. It's really cool how much innovation is happening right now in the document management side from an automation perspective. So really, really cool stuff. And thank you, Chris, on that summary. Now, we also had a blog post from Andrew
Connell, yes. So he shared with us that for the last period of time, he worked with Microsoft Learn on a new set of guidance and tutorials for building apps for Microsoft Teams. So in this article, he shares some links. Check it out if you're interested to learn more about how to build apps for teams, what are the different things that you should take into account. And in this particular article, he mentions interactive meetings apps. So meetings apps are a great way for you to enrich the meeting experience on Teams and make it more interactive, involve users beyond sharing screen.
Yep, absolutely. Now, this one is a summary from API. So talking about the Have a Seat of Microsoft 365 developer platform, which was an event which we did together with Waldek and Abby and Paolo and Tommy and
Tommy.
Rick. Is that all?
Stefan, yeah.
Stefan.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And Paolo.
And Paolo. I think I mentioned Paolo already. Anyway, so Abby was there to talk about the Power BI dashboard integration in the solution, and that was one part of the solution. So we explained how to build this kind of a bit more polished end-to-end scenario, touching Teams and API development and craft development and all of that stuff and Power BI end-to-end. And this is basically Abby's summary on what was happening behind the scenes related on the Power BI. Related on that one, we do have the recording here available as well, so referencing that one in the notes. So that is a nice 2-hour long setup for end-to-end creation. Now, Michael Mendes had a new blog post as well.
Yes, about updating list view JSON formatters for a SharePoint list using Power Automate. And that's an interesting thing. So are you going to update the formatters as in set formatters on the list view, or is it updating the JSON in there? Because it's not clear from the article was it being done. Well, yeah, but I guess he sets the whole thing as opposed to let me change this one property of the object, or
exactly. They're setting up the formatting definition for the view, so then you can actually have a nice looking no, the output outcome
automate
is missing. Okay, anyway, but you can have a nice looking output list out of the configuration as well. Now, Paul Bullock had a new blog post, a summary related on his Cutters Summit 2022 session companion post. So basically all of the assets and things what he went through around the base transformation. And he's been fundamental person on creating that automation tooling, transforming from classic SharePoint pages to modern SharePoint pages, even up to the level from on-premises to the cloud and transforming between. It's just magic. So really, really cool summary from Paul. It just happens. It's just now, Rodrigo Pinto related on actually scripts. He had a blog post related on his Swiss Army knife on accessing the different scripts and capabilities which are available from the PnP script sample gallery, and then how you can actually expose that to be easily available within your operating system. So really nice kind of a small extension on, I need to do this and this in my SharePoint or Microsoft Teams in online. How do I do that? Here it is. And you're ready to go with that. So really cool stuff from Rodrigo. Few tweets. So Waldek, what's this one all about?
Yes, actually, this is a tweet from me highlighting a tweet from somebody else, from Adam. And the extension that he built. So he built an extension for VS Code for CLI for Microsoft 365 to simplify building scripts that use CLI. And the cool thing that he does here is that, so he works on that for a while already, right? And every now and again, we will see an update with new features, new abilities. And the one thing that he did now, which is really cool, I think, is that he's bringing in the CLI docs into the extension. So when you write scripts, you get the help in the context of your work. Like you don't need to go to browser, look it up elsewhere. You can open you get the list of all commands directly in VS Code, and then you can open the help page for that command directly in VS Code. So you have everything in the single place where you work without having to go anywhere else. I think this is a really cool way to have that in product, in context help for the work that you're doing, so that you can stay more in focus and are less, how'd you call that, exposed to
context switching.
And like having internet search the thing by yourself in the hope that you will find the right link.
Exactly. Yep, makes perfect sense. Also, we had a new release of the PnP.js, done by Julie Turner from Synpraxis, and she's been now coordinating this work. with new features and capabilities within that release. Now, this blog, unfortunately, this tweet doesn't have a link to the actual release notes or the system, but we'll get that one in the summary as well. But a lot of other cool capabilities, and that's evolving. The PnP.js is evolving forward based on community contributions. We also had two different videos. So first of all, Paulo had a video around using the PnP drag and drop files and control in SPFX solutions, so making it easy for drag and drop files in top of your web part or an application page or whatever it is, and then uploading automatically that to be in the default document folder on the site. So making it super easy to address these kind of classic scenarios. So thank you, Paulo, for that. And then we had a video from Shane Young related on
reviewing Power Apps, right? When you build an app, you might either want to go through your own app or review app built by somebody else, and looking at the different things, like how can you make it better? How can you troubleshoot it in case things don't work as expected? How can you optimize it so that it's better, it's faster, it's more snappy? So all the different things. He has a bunch of great tips around variables, performance, formulas, and so forth and so on. So definitely, if you build Power Apps, check it out, because that will be invaluable gem in your toolbox.
Absolutely. Now I have to actually talk about, I was thinking this within the discussion with Marcin already. So I have a classic example on the optimization and performance improvements. So it comes back on the troubleshooting in the Power Apps. It's the same thing. You always need to think about the performance as well, because sure, if the number of items is like 5 to 10 or 20, yeah, that's okay. When it's 20,000, that might actually have a pretty significant impact on the performance. But I had one, I think it was a national post in Finland. They had a challenges related, well, many years ago. They have a challenges on their on-premises SharePoint deployment because it was slow. It was a global intranet, and basically we needed to do an investigation how to make it better. And I went there, we investigated, and it's like, hey, so what is this? Yeah, it's automatic routing from the root side of the web application based on your profile. So whenever a user adjusted or come to the root side of the URL, it was then based on the profile, you were redirected to another site collection. The only challenge was somebody had tested something on that root site, which was a content query web part, which had crawling and outputting all of the pages or documents in the whole deployment. So basically what happened was that web part was basically executing full scroll on the farm and outputting that. And then the custom web part rendered, oh, you're in this profile, you'll go here. So you never saw that output, but you can only imagine you come there and start investigating. Oh, what is this? Okay, let's get rid of that. Poof. Now it's 10 times, 100 times faster. See? Case closed.
I'm so good. So
exactly.
That's typically a 10x debugger.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But anyway, so performance is super important, and it's just, and cleaning up as well. If you're testing out quickly something, just remembering that don't leave it in there. The leaving the code, which some people find 10 years later from the code base. It's like, is this really this supposed to be here? I don't know. So
I mean, like, even if you would see it, why do you need to see like everything from the whole?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so we're a bit of a long again on the discussion. Quickly in 1 minute, which is really hard for you, Waldek. Anything interesting was happening this week?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Interesting happening for me? Yes, a lot of stuff. But thank you, Waldek, and thank you, Marcin. And we'll still, I think we have 3 weeks still before we go to a summer break on the PnP Weekly. So something like that, roughly.
Yeah.
So, but thank you everybody for watching. Please remember hashtag PnP Weekly, and when you're tweeting something, so we know that it's the awesome stuff which is getting published, so we can cover that in here and promote your stuff as well. And thank you, Marcin, one more time, and everybody else. Have a great rest of the week. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.